Okay, quite a HaRav.
Okay, so I too apologize. I've been trying since 7 o'clock to connect, but without any complaints, Baruch Hashem, that we made it. So the shir will need to be somewhat a bit shorter than usual because, I have many obligations, but we'll try to make the shir a miut, a machzik, es a meruba. So next week, Sunday, obviously, we won't have a shir. It'll be Chag HaShavuos, Yom Kabbalas HaTorah. And it is only natural that we take this opportunity once again to speak about something that is associated with Yom Kabbalas HaTorah, with Chag HaShavuos, this wonderful day. Ilav HaYoyma, Kama Yosef Ike B'Shuka. So Leil Shavuos, there's a minag kodem, we're up all night. Actually, Shavuos is the only one of the Sholosh HaGolim that doesn't have any specific mitzvahs. Sholosh HaGolim HaKadosh Baruch Hu nosan lo b'chem losai. So Pesach, we have many mitzvahs. Matzah, Moror, Sipi Yetzias Mitzrayim, and above all the others, Korban Pesach. Sukkos, we have many unique special mitzvahs. Dalad Minim, Yeshiva B'Sukkah. Shavuos is only Yom Tov. We don't have mitzvahs, but we have two very well-known minhagim that go back hundreds of years. One minhag is we're up all night b'leil Shavuos, b'oiskim b'Torah. The other minhag is blinches and cheesecake. As strange as it might sound, but this is also a minhag kodem that goes back hundreds of years. So, towards the end of the shir, I want to share some thoughts and some feelings about these minhagim. But first of all, from the halachic point of view, how are we supposed to spend Leil Shavuos? The Shiloh HaKodesh formulated Tikkun Leil Shavuos. Tikkun Leil Shavuos is somewhat of a summary of Kol HaTorah Kulo. And we start and end every one of the parshios in Chamishu Chumshei Torah. Then we do the same with Sheshes Sidrei Mishnah and with the Gemara. And this is a Takona Keduma that goes back hundreds of years. The fundamental idea of being up all night has a source in the Zohar and in Kisvei Ha'ari. So Tikkun Leil Shavuos was put together by the Shiloh, and it is recommended by many, many Gedolei Yisrael throughout the ages from all the different camps. Yesod v'Shoresh Hu HaAvodah, Shar Tes Perik Yud. Who was the Yesod v'Shoresh Hu HaAvodah? He wasn't a Meshiv or a Poisek, but one of the great Chasidei Kedem, and Dafka a Lithuanian Chosid. Derech Chaim, the Nesivos HaMishpot. He has Likutei Halachos on the Siddur, and a Chag HaShavuos. He speaks about the Tikkun, Prima Godim, Eshel Avram Tov Tzadik Dalet. The Chassam Sofer had a minig, which is brought in the Nogach Chassam Sofer. He said Tikkun together with the entire yeshiva. He used to come to the yeshiva and the Chassam Sofer with all his hundreds of Talmidim in Preshburg and the yeshiva went through the entire Tikkun. Kaf HaChaim, Tov Tzadik Dalet, Od Zayin Chet Tet. Kaf HaChaim also said that the Mekabolim say Tikkun. However, the Kaf HaChaim says a Pikabola one should not say Mishnayos. On the other hand, Shulchan Aruch HaRav, Tov Tzadik Dalet, Siv Gimel, Yeshuas Yankov was one of the greatest poskim in his time, the Rav of Lemberg, a friend of the Nesivos HaMishpot, Rabbi Kiva Eger, Rabbi Yankov Orenstein. They say that the Ikar Tikkun is Torah Sheba'al Peh. Torah Sheba'al Peh starts with Mishnayos. Some Gedolim see a problem, Dafka, with Mikra Leil Shavuos, because we don't learn Mikra by night. On the other hand, Chag Yankov and Hilchos Pesach Shulchan Aruch Or HaChaim is a sefer, one of the Sforim of the Shavuos Yankov. Rabbi Yankov Reisha was one of the greatest poskim 350 years ago. Chag Yankov says that Tikkun HaShavuos was made for Amei Oretz, for Amaratz, and they don't know how to learn, so they should at least say Tikkun. Nahara Upashtei. All Minhagei Yisrael are Kodesh Kodeshim. As we see from the Shla and many other sources, they do not agree with the Chag Yankov. Tikkun HaShavuos is not for Amei Arotzos. It is a Minhag Kodesh. The Chassam Sofer and his Talmidim were not Amei Ratzim, but there are different opinions. Today, in the Litvish world, B'nai Torah just up all night in the room. Chassidim say Tikkun. I myself, I can't say Tikkun all night. I fall asleep. I say some Tikkun. As far as I get. And some of the night I just sit and learn. 2:30 in the morning I give a shir, my bismedish, and many people from other shuls come to the shir. It's a packed bismedish. And it's great because 2:30 in the morning, people are already tired. Some of them fall asleep. So I bring it on a chias in the middle of the night, 2:30 in the morning, I give a shir. And the shir is usually not a heavy shir. It's always somewhat associated with the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, with divrei chizuk. So as we see, there are different opinions. How are we supposed to spend the night? Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. What is important is that we're up all night and we're oisik b'Torah. Now, let us discuss the minhag in Tikkun HaShavuos that we say we go through Torah Nevi'im v'Ksuvim, not in their entirety, but the beginning and the end of every Perek, all the Tanakh. So there is a very well-known medrash that is brought in all the poskim in Shulchan Aruch and in Reish Lamed Ches. Yalkut Shemoini Parshas Ki Tisa. And Chazal asked, when Moshe Rabbeinu was in the heavens, how did he know when it's day and when it's night? That's an interesting question. Why was it so important for him to know? Well, I assume that Moshe Rabbeinu, even b'Shamayim, was Makayim Mitzvahs. So how did he know when it's Kishon Shalachas, when it's Kishon Shalachas, when to daven Shachas, when to daven Marav, anyway? So Chazal say, when a Kodesh Baruch Hu taught him Torah Shebachsav, he knew it's day. And when a Kodesh Baruch Hu teaches him Torah Shebal Peh, he knew that it's night. We find the same concept in Torah Debe'eliyo, Perek, Gimel, and the Torah Nevi'ah is Mefarash HaPosek. Yoim le'yoim le'bi'a oimar, v'laylo le'laylo HaShavuos. Yoim le'bi'a oimar is Torah Shebachsav. Laila, Lalali, HaShavuos is Torah Shebal Peh. The Riyah Kodesh Shara Mitzvahs Pashas Ve'eschanim brings this halacha, and the Be'er Heitev and the Mishnah Berurah in Shara Tzion Siman Reish Lamed Ches. Reb Shlomo, I hope you hear me and you see me because I don't hear and I don't see you. If you want some of these sources on the screen, we can do it. I don't know which ones you have.
We have the source. We have the sources for the Yeseres Dibros Chelik of this year.
Oh, I apologize because I didn't know on what we're focusing today. So okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just wrap up the sugya of Torah Shebal Peh and Torah Shebachsav, and then we'll move over to the Yeseres Dibros. So fundamentally, many sources say that by night one should not learn Torah Shebachsav, but there are various different exceptions and different questions that the Gedolei HaPoskim dealt with throughout the ages. Is it a prohibition or merely a minhag not to learn Torah Shebachsav by night? Do we say Tehillim by night? That is a very interesting question. And many poskim are makel regarding saying Tehillim. So this is an interesting discussion. And because I understand that the hachana you prepared is more on the sugya of Aseres HaDibros. So we will move over and briefly discuss the sugya of Aseres HaDibros. Both these sugyas are fascinating. So Kriyas HaTorah and Chag HaShavuos is the parsha of Aseres HaDibros, and the minig is in most Kehilas Yisrael, when we read Aseres HaDibros on Chag HaShavuos, not only on Chag HaShavuos, but in the two different sources in which we read Aseres HaDibros, Parshas Yisroi, Chumash Shamois, Parshas Veschanim, and Chumash Devorim, people rise. And some poskim question this minig. So the minig that people rise, V'yoitzi Moshe Soam lekrasu Elokim v'yisyatzvu b'tachte sahar, and that is the source that people rise when we read Aseres HaDibros. Chuvas Rambam, Siman Reish Samach Gimel, maybe we have it on our screen, that one should not stand up when we say Aseres HaDibros. And why is that? Because of the Gemara and Brochus, Yud Beis Amud HaRav. So maybe let's start off with the Gemara and Brochus. Koyren Aseres HaDibros Shema v'hoyom shemoy v'oyme v'emes v'yatzav v'oyde v'berchas koyanim. In Beis HaMikdash every day they read Aseres HaDibros. Omer Rav Yehuda Meshmol, af b'gvulen bikshu ligroi sken, shekvar bitlu mipnei taroimes haminem. That's the Gemara and Brochus. Yud Beis Amud HaRav. So what's pshat taroimes haminem? Why would they mevatel the minig that read Aseres HaDibros every day because of their centrality and their importance? So in Minchas Osha, I brought various different sources that the Aseres HaDibros are the abbreviation of Kol HaTorah Kulo, and all the other mitzvahs have a source in the Aseres HaDibros. Rashi brings in the name of Rabbeinu Sadi Gaon and Parshas Mishpotim. The Ramban has a drosha on Aseres HaDibros. And the Sefer Tziyoni al Torah, quoted in many sources, writes that Aseres HaDibros, as an abbreviation of all the Taryag mitzvahs, Mesores B'Yudenu Ish Mipi Ish Ad Moshe Rabbeinu. Reb Shlomo, are you with me?
We are with you. We're having, Rav can just be mamshech, and if we
Okay,
get
so
the,
I'll be mamshech. So the Gemara says, the reason they did not implement reading Aseres HaDibros every day, because the minim would say, this is all Shenimsa L'Moshe Messiah. This is all that is important. And they want to cut away most of mitzvahs Torah, and therefore the minim shouldn't have any room for argument that Aseres HaDibros is all that is really needed. That is why Chazal were mevatel the trend to say Aseres HaDibros b'gvulim every day. We find this in Yerushalmi as well, in Brochas Testament Beis. Mipnei Tanis Aminim. Rashi explains it in Brochas, but the Yerushalmi explicitly explains what is Tanis Aminim. Shelo yu oimrim elu levadon nitnu lo leMoshe Messinai. Shuvas Rashba, Chelek Aleph Semakuf Peidalad, we find that in the days of the Rashba, some Rabbonim, some Gedolim, once again, wanted to institute saying Aseres Adibris every day, and the Rashba rejected the minig, and the Tur and the Ramo bring it in Siman Aleph Siv Dalet. However, the Ramo writes, an individual could say Aseres Adibris, that's okay. B'yochid mutar lo imer Aseres Adibris v'kol yoim, aval osor la'amroi b'tzibur. Rav Amram Goen, which is the very first Siddur, Ma'asor Vitri and Siddur of Amram Goen, go back more than 1,000 years. Before the Rambam, at the end of Sefer Ahavo, formulated all the tefillos, the very first early Siddurim are Siddur of Amram Goen. And in Siddur of Amram Goen, we do find Aseres Adibros, together with Parshas Aked and Parshas Aman. Comes along the Marshal, and the Marshal says, B'yamei Chazal, they wanted to put in Aseres Adibros right together with Kriyas Shema, and that is what Chazal rejected. However, to say it before davening or after davening is permissible even b'tzibur. And the Marshal in his Beis Medrash said Aseres Adibros with a tzibur before Baruch She'omar. However, the Beis Yosef and the Ramo say we don't say Aseres Adibros b'tzibur. The Ariyah Kodesh in Shara Kavonis also rejects this minig. However, the Chidon in a Sefer Tuv Ayin says, after you finish davening, you could say Aseres Adibros. What we see from all these sources, on one hand, Divrei Chazal are binding. And B'yamei Chazal, as we find, Brochas Yud Beis and Bavli, Brochas Tesom and Beis Yerushalmi, there was a wish to say Aseres Adibros with Kriyas Shema, and Chazal said no, Taroimis Aminim. In the Yerushalmi it is defined Tanis Aminim. The Minim might have room to argue. This is all there is. All the rest is just Divrei Chachamim, it's not Min HaTorah. On the other hand, we see in different times, in the days of the Rashba, the days of the Marshal, people once again very much wanted to say Aseres Adibros because of their centrality. These are the fundamentals of all Taryag mitzvahs. And Gedol Yisrael, some of them did compromise before davening, after davening. Every yochid could say, only b'tzibur we shouldn't say. And this brings us to the controversy: do we stand up when we say Aseres Adibros?
Can I ask a question, Kvod Rav? What was the gather of Bitlu Mitnei Torah Samin? Was that a gzeira that can't be changed? Or is that possible that if these minim are no longer around today and we don't know if they are, therefore we're not chayshish for this at the moment?
That is exactly our question. It is not the bitlu, because according to the Lashon of the Gemara, bikshu lo imar, elu shikvar bitlu. It's not something, there was a trend, there was a request, and Chazal say no. Bitlu mipnei Torah Mesaminim. Does that have the status of a gezeira or just a chashash? I think that is part of the controversy regarding do we stand up for Aseres Adibros or no. So the Rambam writes we should not stand up for the same reasoning, and that is also in Shalosh Teshuvos HaDavid Emes, the Chido. However, in Tuv Ayin, the Chidu wrote many Svorim, and in Tuv Ayin he does recommend, and he is miyashiv. So, what is obvious from the Rishonim? When Chazal bitlu Aseres Adibros, that is binding, like any other Tekonas Chazal. But the question is, do we need to expand this takana? Because Chazal didn't deal with the question, do we stand or don't we stand? Chazal only dealt with the question, do we read Aseres HaDibros B'tzibur, B'toch Seder HaTfilah? Chazal said no, and no is no. No is no forever. But do we need to expand? Do we need to be Medama, Milsa, La Milsa? So we do stand up. So some poskim, including the Chido, says we shouldn't stand up. So I want to briefly share with you various different svaras to be miyashav the minig. We do stand up. We stand up because we read the entire parsha, not only a sense of difference. So we do read the entire parsha. So that doesn't give room to say only a sense of difference is important. Svara number 2. The reason we stand up is a zecher l'mamed har Sinai. Because when Moshe Rabbeinu read the Aseres HaDibros, they all stood. Rav Moshe Feinstein, Igis Moshe, Orach Chaim Chelik Dalet Chov Beis, says, well, in the times of Chazal, they wanted to say Aseres HaDibros together with Kriya Shema. Kriya Shema is not part of Aseres HaDibros. B'afar Piken, they were Choshesh L'Taroimes Aminim. So the argument, we read the entire parsha according to Rav Moshe, is not a sensible argument. And what I wrote in my sefer, and this is an assumption Tosfos writes a few times in Shas. What Chazal were metaken, they were metaken. And that is binding. And many times in the past more than 2 years that we're learning, especially when we're learning Hilchos Shavuos, we dealt with the sugya. Sometimes the reasoning of Xeris is no longer reasonable. It's no longer relevant. But that the Koras and the Xeris stand intact. But in our day and age, we don't struggle with the tzedaikim. In our day and age, if you're from, you keep all the mitzvahs. Those that don't like the mitzvahs don't keep anything. Our challenge today is not the tzedaikim. We just want to adhere to Torah Shebachsav and not the Torah Shebal. We have many struggles. This is not one of them. So in our shuls, if we stand up for Aseres HaDibros, we have nothing to worry about. Our kids that were so afraid, we're losing kids. What we define today as kids going off the derech. It's not because they question Torah Shebal and Torah Shebachsav has more appeal. So because standing up for Aseres HaDibros is a reflection and a manifestation of Kavod HaTorah, and it's a zecher to Mamed Har Sinai, Hanach lehem lebnei Yisrael, im lo neviim hem, bnei neviim hem. So there's Yerushalmi and Megillah Chavav Amud Beis. Omer Reb Simon b'shem Reb Yeshua ben Levi. Ein lechoto in brocha lefonav v'la'achrov elu shiras hayam v'aseres HaDibros v'klolos v'brochos, the parsha of Teichacham. Omer Reb Avu, ani lo shamati, neren ha'devorim v'aseres HaDibros. So in Yerushalmi, Mesechet Megillah Chavav and Weiss, it's not found in Bavli, but it is in Yerushalmi. There are 2 different opinions. So in some places, they didn't say a brocha on every parsha. The first oile said a brocha, and the last oile said a brocha. However, in a very limited number of Parshios, they said a bracha, Lefnei v'acharei. Shiras Hayam, Aseres Adibris, and the Toichocha, both in Parshas Bechukoisai and in Parshas Kisavoy. Rabbavu says, only Aseres Adibris. So they did make a distinction between Aseres Adibris and other kliyos. Why weren't they Choshesh V'Taroimis Aminim? I think this is a gewaldige raya, and I wonder why this was left to the Minchas Osher. In 1,000 years, that Gedolim deal with these questions. But I think this Yerushalmi is such a powerful raya, she'ein medamin milsa la milsa. What Chazal were metaken, they were metaken. What they weren't metaken, they weren't metaken. So according to the Bavu, it is only a Aseres Adibris that necessitate the brocha lefnei v'acharei. Why weren't they Choshesh L'Taroimis Aminim? So this proves that what Chazal were Choshesh, they were Choshesh. Maybe it was a different time, a different day and age. Rabbavu was one of the later Ameroim. The story in Brochas Yud Beis in the days of the Tanoim. We know that in the days of the Tanoim, the movement of Tzaddikim were extremely powerful. And it was a huge struggle in the days of Churban Beis Hamikdash and leading up to Churban Beis Hamikdash. But at the later days, the Soif Tkufas Ameroim, the power of the Tzaddikim waned and they withered away. So maybe that is why they were no longer Choshesh. So once again, Hanach lebnei Yisrael, im lo neviim hem, bnei neviim hem. And our meaning today is to stand up for Aseres Adibris. Why is Aseres Adibris unique? I just want to point to the Rambam and to Rashi. Mesechet Tomid Perik Hey, when the Mishnah says, in the Mikdash every day, they said, Aseres Adibris together with Kriyas Shema. The Rambam writes, Lefi sheheim ikar hadas v'reishisoi. So the Rambam defines Aseres Adibris, ikar hadas v'reishito. It all starts with Aseres Adibris. Rashi Parshas Mishpotim, Chov Daled Yud Beis, quotes Rabbeinu Sadi point. Aseres Adibris are a summary. All the Taryag mitzvahs are based and built on Aseres Adibris. We find the same in Parshas Yisro and Targum Yonason. Actually, Rabbeinu Sadi Gaon enumerates, he has a list of the entire Taryag mitzvahs, how they all fit in, and each and every mitzvah of the Taryag, what is the shaykhs it has with which of the Aseres Adibris? I mentioned before Sefer Tziyoni ala Torah. Well, today when you say Tziyoni, in our society, it has somewhat of a negative connotation. But we have a Sefer Tziyoni ala Torah, and the Chidah in Shema Gedolim speaks about his greatness. He was one of the giants of yore. And the Tziyoni in Parshas Yisro writes that the Seder of Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon is Mesores B'Yudenu Ish Mepi Ish Ad Moshe Rabbeinu. This is a very unusual statement. Something we do not find in Chazal. And one of the Gedolei Yisrael says, it's a Mesores B'Yudenu Ish Mepi Ish Ad Moshe Rabbeinu. So Aseres Adibris have extreme importance. And I want to quote Yerushalmi, very close to the previous source, Brochas Tes Omed Aleph. Mipnei ma koiden shtei parshas alolu b'kol yoim in Beis Hamikdash, Kriyas Shema and Aseres Adibris. מפני שכוסה בהם שכיבה וקימה, רב לוי אומר, מפני שעשרת הדיברות כלולים בהם. So Aseret HaDibros are included in the two parshiyos of Kriya Shema. And that is why in Beis HaMikdash they read Kriya Shema. In many Sidurim, especially the Sidurim that are based on Torah Sa'ari, in Kriya Shema, there is a tziyun of all the Aseret HaDibros, where each of the Aseret HaDibros fits in to the two parshiyos of Kriya Shema. And we find in Yerushalmi that Aseret HaDibros is part of Kriya Shema. Rabbi Levi Omar, mepnei she'aseret HaDibros klulim behem. So Aseret HaDibros on one hand are nirmas in Kriya Shema. On the other hand, all the other Taryag mitzvahs have their basis in Aseret HaDibros. And that is why in the days of Chazal, Bikshu Likrois Aseret HaDibros V'Durim, Chazal were afraid that that will give power to the movement of the Tzedaikim, and that is why they said no. The minig to stand by Aseret HaDibros is a minig V'Sikim. It is the minig in our shuls, it is the minig in my shul, and as we explained today, Minag Yisrael Torah. It is the right thing to do. Minchas Osher Moyadim, Chelik Gimel. This is a sefer that came out in the Kufa of COVID, of Corona. So it wasn't as widely distributed as my other story. So whatever we discussed today, the beginning of today's shir about learning Mikra Balaylo, and a very broad discussion about the essence of Aseret HaDibros. And I say like the Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim, Yosem Mashe Korosi Lefnechem Kosov Kan. So in Minchas Rosh HaMoedim Cheregim on Simen Nun Aleph and Simen Nun Dalet, if anybody wants to expand his idea in this sugya, la'oirach u'la'oimek, broaden the scope and a more in-depth discussion of these sugyas. So it's a Minchas Rosh HaMoedim Chelegim Nun Aleph Nun Dalet, and I just want to share a very brief thought with you. I started off today's shir with two minhagim. We learn all night. Whether we say tikkun or we just learn, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. Why do we eat blinches and cheesecake? Choy Yanket writes, based on the posuk Dvash v'chol avtachas l'shomech. In Psachim Samach Esum and Beis, there's a machlokes of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. How do we reconcile a stira between two psukim? Atzeres al Hashem, Atzeres Lochem. Rabbi Eliezer writes, any individual could choose. Either you learn all day Yom Tov, or you eat and you drink and you have a jolly good time. Rabbi Yeshua says no. It's not for each and every person to decide. Chetzio Hashem, v'chetzio lachem. Half a day is dedicated la'avodas Hashem, l'torah v'litfilo, and then simchas Yom Tov, bosor v'yayin. And then the Gemara says something which is surprising. Hakal moedim ba'atzeres tebe'ina beinam elochem. Chag HaShavuos stands apart. And even Rabbi Eliezer agrees. Shavuos, you need lochem. We would think the opposite. Yom Kabbalas HaTorah, maybe the entire day should be dedicated. L'Torah v'l'avodah. Rashi writes. And this is so important. Laharis shenoyach v'mekuval olav yom zeh shebo nitnu Torah. We want to show our kids, our children, the coming generations. This is an important message we want to convey. Torah is simcha. We love this day. This is a wonderful day. And we're so happy and grateful that we receive Torah. And the manifestation of our simcha is that Olam has a manifestation. Not only telling, not only learning, cheesecake, blinches, dvash, v'cholav, tachas, nishoni. So there are different minhagim. When do we eat the melech yisuda? I think many yekes in Germany, the minig was, Sudas Leil Chag HaShavuos was a melech yisuda. Our minig, and I think that is the more common minig today, by night we eat a proper Sidus Yom Tov, basa v'yayin. In the morning we make kiddush on machol echol v'dvash, and then we have a suda. So let me share with you my personal feeling. You can't start Yom Kabbalah Satera with blinches. Doesn't go, doesn't fly. You start off Kabbalah Satera with learning Torah all night. One night in the entire year where we don't sleep, we learn Torah. If you learn Torah all night and you didn't speak the Devorah B'Telem, Bedinu Sheyoto Schoro. Then in the morning, you really deserve your blinches. So this is a story. It's just a story. It is quoted in the name of the Goen. I think it's more appropriate to the Baal Shem Tov. But regardless, it might be the Baal Shem Tov and the Goen. So one of the Talmidim of the Goen or the Baal Shem Tov came to get a bracha, and he told his Rebbe he needs to leave town, and he has a long trip, a long voyage, and he came to ask for a bracha. And his Rebbe told him, don't forget, Shnei Tamidim B'Kol Yom. And he wondered, what did his Rebbe mean? Shnei Tamidim B'Kol Yom. There is no Korban Tumah today, the Achashachor of Beis HaMikdash. What did he mean? So he went to ask one of the great Talmidim. If it's the Baal Shem Tov, he went to ask the Maggid, the great Maggid of Mezrich. If the story occurred with a gun, he went to ask Reb Chaim Volozhin. And he explained, Shnei Tamidim B'Kol Yom is the very first Sif in Shulchan Aruch HaChaim and the very last Sif in Shulchan Aruch HaChaim. The Rama, Siman Aleph Sif Aleph, the Rama writes, Shavisi Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. That is the motto of every Yid, every Yerei Shemayim. We live in the presence of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Shavisi Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. The very last Sif in Shulchan Aruch HaChaim, Siman Tov Reish Tzadik Zayin. When the question is, do we need to make a Simcha Purim Koton? The Rama writes, V'toiv leiv mishte tomid. Why not? Make a Suda Purim Koton. Toiv leiv mishte tomid. Is that typical for the Goen? Toiv leiv mishte tomid? I don't know. Maybe. It's in the Rama. But I think it's more fitting for the Baal Shem Tov. Shnei Tamidim B'Kol Yom. Don't forget. On one hand, Shavis Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. On the other hand, Toiv leiv mishte tomid. I add on to this word. It needs to be Tamidim Kisidron Umisofin Kel Chasam. If you start with Shavisi Hashem Lenegdi Tamid, it's okay to have Toiv leiv mishte tomid. But anybody that starts off with Toiv leiv mishte tomid, he'll never get to Shavisi Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. Yesh mukdem v'ma'uchar b'Torah. If Siman Aleph and Sif Aleph is Shavis Hashem Lenegdi Tamid, then you move on to Toiv leiv mishte tomid, and we're not afraid. It's going to be Toivus Leif and Simchas HaTorah, Simchas HaMitzvah. But you can't start off with Toiv leiv mishte tomid. And I say, you deserve your blinches and your cheesecake only after you're up all night and you learn Torah. Dvash v'cholav tachas tishoinech. And we want to prove we love Torah. I once said, Ezu ben oilam haba, ashoin alochas b'kol yoyim. Ezu ben oilam hazeh, one that not only learns halachas, he learns Ktaisim ben Asiyas. He's mishtasheh b'divrei Torah. He loves listening to a good shir He's not only a Ben Olam Haba, he is a Ben Olam Hazeh. That's our Olam Hazeh. Many times when I speak to young Talmidim, I say, who's a lucky man? A man that's getting paid for things he loves to do anyway. So if I would win the New York lottery and I would suddenly win $100 million, I doubt it'll ever happen because I never buy a ticket. And without buying a ticket, you can't win. But if I would get $100 million, I don't know what would change in my lifestyle. What will I stop doing? Will I stop giving a shir every Sunday afternoon to the African in America? No. Will I stop giving shurim in general? No. Will I stop writing? No. Will I stop writing shuvas? No. So what would I stop doing? I don't think anything will fundamentally change. Maybe I'll buy a new set of chairs in my home. I'll give some more support to my kids. I'll have much more money to give to tzedakah. But nothing will fundamentally change in my lifestyle. So I'm the luckiest person in the world. I'm getting paid for doing things I would do anyway. So this is our Olam Hazeh, not only our Olam Haba, and that is why Yom Kippur is a Torah. We eat machole chole v'dvash, we eat blinches and cheesecake, and your kids will ask you, Abba, why are you eating cheesecake? We don't eat cheesecake Pesach. Okay, we could maybe have matzah cheesecake, I don't know. But we don't eat cheesecake Rosh Hashanah, we don't eat Shabbos. Well, Mayim Yomayim. And we say this day epitomizes our Olam Hazeh. And this is a message we want to convey to you, our dear children. Torah is not only Olam Hazeh. It's not only the greatest mitzvah. It is our greatest joy. And that is why, yes, Dvash v'chalav tachas b'shamech. So let us dive into HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He should give us so much dvash and so much chalav. We should be able to continue for many. Lange gesehen to you, Lahagel Torah Ladira, all of us together. We should be Nisyageya b'Torah and Nishtashea b'Divrei Torah, La'orech Yom Torah, and so have a beautiful Yom Tov and Kol Tov to all of you.
Yes, quite a Rav. Thank you very much, and I thank both the Rav and the Ilam for being misamate for the technical issue we had at the beginning. Okay, we wish the Rav a good Yontif. Thank you very much, and we'll see. We're going to miss, unfortunately, because the Yontif will miss a shir, but we'll do our kfiyas the week after.
Be'ez Hashem, I hope to be together with you in 2 weeks' time.